What's up everyone, welcome back to more Reddit stories about Karens, entitled people, and all that kind of stuff. As usual, we'll be checking out some more Reddit posts today, so be sure to share your thoughts about these stories down in the comments and let's get into it. Neighbor is currently video recording me and has a camera directly pointed at my bedroom window. I spoke with police here and they said that he legally has the right to record anything he wants. However, I am sure I have some right to privacy. When the police visited my neighbor regarding the camera, my neighbor did move the camera ever so slightly toward the street. Now a month later, the camera is directly pointing into my bedroom window again. My home is about 50 feet away from his. It is clear that this is where it is recording. He has also threatened me when I have asked personally to move the camera, and he replied with, "My house, my rules," as well as a mention of a recording of me calling him the N-word. I didn't, on said camera. I just want it pointed away from my bedroom window. I'm sure he can hear what goes on in the bedroom as well. There is a side issue that he has already been approached by police about. He has an LRAD, which is a long-range acoustic device, aka a sound cannon that is used by law enforcement for crowd control, and an outside audio system pointed at our home, where he blasts random sounds at night and into the early morning. Our code enforcement officer looked into the problem and found out the guy who used to live in our home sold it due to the sounds during all hours of the night. He tells our other neighbors it's the railroad and the government flying drones over our homes. He told us it was our mortgage company at first trying to make us move. He is dangerous in the sense that he is mentally incapable of making the right decisions. Update. So a ton has happened since I last posted. I had mentioned that my neighbor had been basically using sound terrorism to harass us. I began writing in a log of each event that occurred, with the time, the date, the description, if I called the police. I did for almost every one, and it began to show an alarming pattern. He was playing sounds at random times of the night every single night. After each major event of sounds, I would drop off a written statement to my local police station for the code enforcement officer. The city was now looking at charging him for noise violations based on my complaints. I took my 3-page log and copies of 7 signed statements, and finally had enough of the police taking their time to work on the case against my neighbor. I dropped $95 on paperwork to begin an anti-harassment order against my neighbor. I made sure to explicitly mention the camera pointed in my bedroom window and the ongoing noises. He was served the temporary order the very day by the local police. And sure enough, the noises ramped up. Before our court date to discuss the anti-harassment order, we were subpoenaed to be witnesses for the noise violation. We also brought the former owner of the home as well as the person who lived on the other side of my neighbor as witnesses to his noise-making capabilities. My neighbor never showed up to the court date, and at that point had $1,250 pending in tickets. His lawyer showed up an hour late, and the judge graciously accepted his plea to move the date a month forward. Disappointment. Then the date for the anti-harassment order came. Once again, my neighbor didn't show, and his lawyer begged for more time to look over the case. The judge was just and said that everyone has a right to defend their First Amendment rights, so he moved the court date for a month later as well. Disappointment number 2. The noises are continuing on the regular at this point, and we are trying to record them as best as we can on our phones. It was really hard to do because the noises were short and happened at random in the middle of the night. The date for the second anti-harassment hearing arrived, and finally we saw our neighbor come through the courtroom and sit in the back. When it was our turn to explain the situation, we made sure to present our call log, our statements, and videos that we had as evidence against our neighbor. Our neighbor's lawyer tried to get us to give up the call log because he mentioned he was not aware of it before our court date. The judge basically told the lawyer to go F himself. The lawyer's only defense for my neighbor was that he worked long hours and couldn't possibly be awake in the middle of the night to terrorize us, and that conversely, we were the ones making the noises. We then brought up the fact that our neighbor had a security camera pointed directly at our home, and he should have plenty of evidence to prove that we were indeed the noisemakers. The judge very confidently approved our anti-harassment order stating no more noises, no more cameras in our windows or at us in general, and our neighbor is not allowed within 25 feet of us. He immediately moved the camera pointing in our bedroom window to being completely flush with the side of the house. Awesome. This was great news. We finally achieved some peace. And then the date for the noise violation trial came. Just his lawyer showed up. and made a deal with the city lawyer that one ticket would be paid, in exchange for no appeal to our anti-harassment order and to throw out 2 tickets. It sucked, but they took the deal. Whatever, and all seemed well. Then about a month after the anti-harassment order kicked in, the noises began again, and the camera began to slowly point into our garage, back in the direction toward the bedroom window. This time, the police noticed something more alarming. A red light was going off in the tinted window directly below the camera on the outside of my neighbor's house. They shone their flashlight and spotted a lens. My neighbor had a camera inside his window pointed at my bedroom window the entire time the order was in place, and long before that. The officers told us to stay quiet, don't be alarmed, but they now were actively seeking a search warrant for the property to seize any noise-making equipment and to take down the cameras, as he had broken the order. The next weekend, my neighbor was arrested, and we got to sit outside on the front porch while they disassembled the cameras, and seized speaker after speaker, megaphones, etc. from my neighbor's home. They said he had 4 feet of insulation surrounding the room with the camera, and the front door of the home was completely barred shut. Unfortunately, they just seized the equipment and will eventually give it back. My neighbor was out of jail the next day, and since they didn't have a search warrant for his hard drives, they couldn't place any voyeurism charges, despite my insistence. They even mentioned they saw me and my husband on a laptop of his. I'm just happy that the noises have stopped, and as far as I know, no more hidden cameras. I'm just glad I could update this crazy situation for you guys. I'm sure I'm not out of the woods yet. Update 2. It's close to a year now that we've dealt with the worst of my neighbor. Almost a year ago, we achieved the success of having an anti-harassment order granted. That summer, he was arrested for harassing us, and he stopped with the cameras and the noises. But something was a-brewing behind those closed doors. Around early November 2017, we had a knock on the door one evening. It was an officer asking if we had heard gunshots in the area. We had not. Soon into our conversation, he mentioned it was our neighbor who called and complained. They were aware of the situation and assured us that despite the situation, they have to respond to all gunshot calls. I was honestly not surprised that after all the quiet, something started up again. The next day, a police cruiser parked across the street from our home. I was expecting someone to knock again and ask about gunshots. No one came to the door, and the officer sat across the street watching my home for over an hour. The next day, I emailed an officer I had been working with previously regarding the situation. The officer told me that my neighbor had been calling 911 every single day on my address for gunshots. By the time I got an email back, it had been a week. Every single day, this man was coming home from work, eating dinner, tending to daily life, and calling 911 on us for shooting guns. The officer said he would look into seeing if this counted as harassment through a third party. The new year came and went, and in early January I emailed the officer back, and his response was simply that the city prosecutor wanted to set up a phone conference to discuss the plan going forward. The city prosecutor mentioned to me that at that point in time, my neighbor had still been calling 911 every day, even the morning of the conference call. She said they contacted all of my other neighbors to see if they heard any gunshots, and asked if they would testify that they have not heard anything come from our property. They also planned to charge my neighbor with some counts of harassment and wrongfully utilizing emergency services. Part of his deal with the arrest over the summer involved him able to avoid jail time by having good behavior, and they're looking for their time back, essentially. His arraignment date came and his pre-trial was set, came and went. It's being continued until next month. I am worried that he will try to continue this case until the end of time. Our anti-harassment order expires soon, and we will have to drag him to court once again to renew it, and spend more money. Things are starting to feel pretty dim again, and honestly, the recent continuance knocked the wind out of my sails. All I can do until I am called as a witness/victim is wait. Update 3. My neighbor pled guilty to 3 of 19 counts using emergency services inappropriately, and one other charge they won't explain. He cannot talk to me or my husband and cannot bother anyone on this property ever. He is also required to have a mental health evaluation, which he was supposed to go do on his own when this started rolling. The result of breaking any of these rules will hopefully be jail time. Update 4. So my neighbor decided to throw up some nice floodlights pointed over his fence right at our bedroom window right after his court date. In that time, we have sold the home and moved to an apartment in our transition to our new destination, far, far away. He turned on the floodlights every night at 10 p.m., and they would clearly shine through the bedroom window even with the blackout film, and really shone through our guest bedroom where my mom stayed for a week to visit. Police came out and took pics and drove by several nights to confirm they were still up. Part of his plea deal is to not commit, quote, similar incidences and further harass us. This comes into play later. I called the police, and they ended up serving me papers saying I was required to be a witness in court. Court date came. They were asking for jail time, and my neighbor's attorney asked for a continuance because he didn't have time to review the new info. They granted it. Second week comes around. We rescheduled for a special hearing with a pro tem judge. Mistake. Today was the hearing, and the second time we all had to take off work to show up. The judge immediately told the prosecutor, since she didn't have a formal briefing, that he was not familiar with the case and that it would not be heard today. Typically, the judge who does hear the city's cases is well informed, and the prosecutor objected to this, saying it is not a requirement. You knew what was on the docket today. The judge further mentioned that because specific changes were not filed, and they were just asking for jail time given back onto the jail time they waived at the previous hearing, he wasn't interested in doing this today. He read the plea deal and said that similar incidences is too vague and should be thrown out, and he didn't know how shining lights onto our property was similar to whatever he got in trouble for in the first place. Then he mentioned he had court in Seattle in 2 hours and wasn't interested in hearing my testimony today. Also, since we will be gone by October, he didn't see the issue and why we were even there. Since we moved, we can't be harassed anymore, so problem solved. I broke down in tears of frustration. The prosecutor said I don't have to be a witness anymore, and they would talk to the usual judge in the case, and to keep in touch with her. When my neighbor walked out, he did a very dramatic prayer hands in the air, like he knew he won. I give up again. We're leaving, it's over. I will never get my day in court. I will never know what I did to this man to make him harass me so deeply. I will never get my 2 years of my life back. Edit. The only good thing out of this is the police report that we got after they raided his home last summer. Dude's a weirdo sexual deviant, even in the eyes of a very liberal and accepting Washingtonian. Okay, all I gotta say about this is wow, dude. Absolutely wild. It's unfortunate that we didn't get to hear about any solid justice after all this time. But I guess the important part is that OP just got the hell out of there and we'll never have to worry about him again. Insane situation though. And I don't think there's much logic or reason to be found as to why this guy targeted them so much. I think the simple answer is that he's obviously not mentally sound. Anyway, that's going to be all for today's insanity. Be sure to drop a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't yet, and comment down below. So take care, I'll see you next time.